Hello everyone and welcome to this dissemination webinar. Thank you for joining. This webinar will be highlighting the outcomes of the antimicrobial resistance global expert mission to Germany that took place in May 2019. My name is Sandeep Sandhu. I work within the international team as the Knowledge Transfer Manager at the Knowledge Transfer Network, and I will be chairing this session. Before we start, I'd like to cover some housekeeping. So due to the large number of people registered, we have put you all on mute to prevent any background noise. After testing your speakers, please do remember to connect your audio by using the join audio icon at the bottom of the screen, or you can join by telephone using the joining instructions provided. If you do have any technical problems during the webinar, please use the chat box and seek advice there, and Poonam Full, my colleague, will be happy to assist you. We encourage you to send in your questions during the course of the webinar as well, and if you do have questions, please use the Q&A box to type in your questions to the presenters, and my colleagues Tanya and Gabriella will be posing your questions to all of the speakers. One final thing to note is that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared following this webinar, and along with the slides as well. And this will also be present on the KTN website. So welcome again to this webinar. So we'll be highlighting the outcomes of the Innovate UK Antimicrobial Resistance Global Expert Mission to Germany. This is hosted by the Knowledge Transfer Network and myself and Gabriela Juarez Martinez, who is the Knowledge Transfer Manager for Pharma and MedTech at the KTN, have been working to organise and arrange this webinar. So I'll just briefly run through the agenda for this webinar. So it will start with me giving a brief welcome and introduction. Then we have Peter Durkin, Missions Programme Lead at Innovate UK, providing an overview of the Global Expert Missions Programme. Then at 2:15 we have the key findings from the Global Expert Missions report, and this will be provided by Phil Packer, Innovation Lead of Antimicrobial Resistance and Vaccines at Innovate UK. We then have two of the experts who were present on the mission, providing their experiences of the mission and their kind of final thoughts and experiences from the trip. So we first have Daniel Hines, Director of Preclinical Development at Destiny Pharma. Then we have Professor Till Backman, Deputy Head of Infection Medicine at the University of Edinburgh. Following that, we have a short interactive session. So we'll be using Mentimeter, and that will be led by Gabriella, the Knowledge Transfer Manager for Pharma and MedTech at the KTN. We then have a Q&A session. So this will be led by Gabriella and Tanya, European Partnership Manager at Innovate UK. We then finish off with next steps from the Global Expert Mission. So what's going to happen next, and that will be led by Morel Owen Hughes, Innovation Advisor at the Enterprise European Network. And then we hope to close at 3:55. So the Knowledge Transfer Network, who are we and what do we do? So we are the UK's innovation network. Our mission is to deliver economic growth, connect people, to speed up innovation, solve problems, and find new markets for new ideas. We bring together businesses, entrepreneurs, innovators, academics, funders, government agencies together to help develop new products, processes, and services. We work very closely with Innovate UK Innovate UK and deliver their Global Expert Missions Programme. So that programme started in 2017 to provide an evidence base to where we support international collaboration, and I will let Peter talk more about that. And just to flag that following these global expert missions, we publish reports. So you'll find the report on the antimicrobial resistance mission to Germany in 2019 on the KTN website, and I've got all of the relevant links on this slide, which will be shared with you. So the KTN International link will provide all of the publications from the global expert missions we've delivered. I mentioned my colleague Gabriella. She sits within our health team, which is one of the key sectors we work on, and I would highly recommend that you sign up to their newsletters if you want to know more about funding opportunities or networking opportunities in this area. And I will leave it there on that slide. So I'll return back to the agenda, and I'd like to hand over to Peter to talk more about the Global Expert Missions Programme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, first of all, to my KTN colleagues for doing such a great job organizing all these dissemination events and also running a brilliant mission. And of course, most importantly, thanks to all of you who are, despite the lovely weather, turning up at this webinar. It's much appreciated, and I do hope that you get a lot out of it over the next couple of hours. So before my distinguished colleagues are going to go into detail about the expert mission to Germany, I thought it's probably worthwhile just explaining where they fit in, where they come from, and what's possible next steps. We planned for these kind of missions. So that's what I'm going to do the next couple of minutes. Now, just as Sandeep just explained about the KTN, Innovate UK works closely with the KTN, and of course our remit is to help UK businesses succeed and drive economic growth through innovation. So it's our task to help these businesses, bring their concept, their ideas, to market and to commercialization. And of course, it has a global aspect to it. UK businesses don't, despite being on an island, we live in a global world, as we all know. So again, it doesn't come as a surprise that Innovate UK is internationally and globally active. Now, although we have an idea where the best of innovation is that we want to connect these businesses to, we don't always know in a lot of detail what's going on in these markets. I mean, you can do a Google search, but that's not really going to get you under the skin of what's happening in a particular country, in a particular sector. And that's really what global expert missions are designed to do. So as it says on the screen, global expert missions really are typically a week-long visit into a market. In this particular case, antimicrobial resistance to Germany. And really, they have kind of three objectives to help us, or to help UK companies ultimately build partnerships to inform Innovate UK, the wider public sector, and also businesses. And of course, this particular dissemination event is part of that. And also to showcase UK capabilities and strengths. So 6 to 8 experts who can talk on behalf of the sector, not just their individual organization, are sent overseas. So they give up their own time. We pay their travel and subsistence. They meet with a range of potential partners, businesses, public sector bodies, government, etc. To really, as I said before, get under the skin as what's happening in AMR in Germany in this case. They come back to the UK after that week, and they then help write a report with the key conclusions and the key learnings from the visit. And then it's a matter of making sure that as many relevant people as possible, both business and public sector, get to know what we've learned and what we have found as part of that investment by Innovate UK and the KTN. Now, that is just one side of what we call the missions program. So that's really about scoping what's happening in a particular sector in a particular country. There's another strand to this program, which is very specifically focused on business opportunities for a cohort of selected companies. So this particular case where we've had an expert mission, it's had a lot of findings. We then said, hang on, there's something really strong in Germany in terms of potential partnerships with the UK. Let's follow that up with a selection and a delegation of UK companies under certain criteria, openly recruited, just like everything else we do within Innovate UK. And let's help them through a 3-stage process to help them find those partners and the best of innovation to help them drive their ideas into the market, and not necessarily Germany or the UK, a global market. So as it said on the screen there, so we just talk about global expert missions now on the global business innovation programs, which are delivered by the EEN. So expert missions are delivered by the KTN. The global business innovation programs are delivered by the EEN, and we typically run about 10 of each every year. So it's quite a significant international program. GBIPs, as we call them, they are in 3 stages. So it's not just about taking those businesses overseas and putting them in a bus and a plane and helping them find and open doors for them. It's really about first getting them ready for the visit, helping them explain what it's like to do business in Germany, what does the landscape look like, who are typically the kind of people that we want to connect with, and that's an iterative process. We're always interested in finding out what the businesses themselves want out of the program, of course. Once we've gone through that preparation phase, then we take those typically 15 companies, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. We take them to Germany or any other market for that matter. And that's where we connect them. We will help them open doors to people they wouldn't normally be able to meet on their own. Then they come back into the UK. And then crucially, we don't just leave them to their own devices. We then help them exploit the opportunities that they've managed to identify during the visit. They get a business advisor allocated to them who will work through a plan with them over the next sort of 6 to 9 months. And again, all of this is ultimately aimed at economic growth. So it's really nice kind of structured capability to, on the one hand, find out what the best opportunities are, identify what those opportunities would mean for UK businesses, and then follow that up with a very specific business-focused program under the GBIP banner. So that's kind of a quick snapshot of what the whole program looks like. So that's it. I'll hand you back to Sandy.
Thanks very much, Peter. That was really clear. So I'll now hand over to Phil Packer, Innovation Lead at Innovate UK, and covers antimicrobial resistance and vaccines. Over to you, Phil.
Hello, thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me. So as Sandeep said, I'm Phil Packer. I'm from Innovate UK, and I'm the Innovation Lead on AMR and vaccines. So I'm not going to talk a great deal about Innovate UK, other than basically the innovation arm for the government, and we're trying to invest in business to try and develop research, technology and capability, and obviously in the long term help the UK economy. If I say anything now that doesn't make sense, please drop a comment into the comments box or the question box, and I'll pick that up afterwards. So I'm going to talk at a very high level, really, over the next couple of minutes, and I probably won't take the full 15 minutes. But but I'm going to talk a little bit about why we're looking at AMR, and I think most of you will understand that. A little bit about why we chose Germany, and then some of the key outputs of the GEM, and that will be at a very high level, because I don't really want to go, because you can look at the report, as Sandeep said earlier on, and you can look at the detail of it. So I'll be just picking out the high points that we've picked up and the things that we want to follow up possibly. So if we start off a little bit about why AMR, well, I don't really want to talk about, we're hearing a lot about lots of people dying at the moment for obvious reasons, so I'm not going to talk about the number of deaths we're going to predict if we don't do anything about AMR at the moment, but I would like to just point out some of the economics behind it, and I think that's particularly important at the moment, and as you'll see why I follow up on this. So essentially, there's going to be a major impact if AMR isn't addressed, and there could be as high as a 3.8% loss of global domestic product if this carries on, and there'll be huge increases in healthcare costs, and also the outputs from livestock could drop by as much as 7.5% a year. And you can also see the figures there produced by the OECD, and suggesting what the influence of AMR may be on the global economy. Now, I think the reason I wanted to highlight this is because I think everybody's probably noticing at the moment the effect that COVID-19 is having on the economy, and that is making people sit up and think. So one of my hopefuls for the positives that might come out of COVID-19 is that people will realize that AMR is likely to be a potentially bigger problem if we don't do anything about it, and therefore we do need to invest more in that, work more across the international borders, and develop some answers to that future problem. So what is the AMR strategy in the UK? And you've probably all seen this, and we had a 5-year strategy from 2013 to 2018. And Innovate UK have been heavily involved in trying to address and help address some of those things that were highlighted in the strategy. And we've actually invested over that period about £12 million in about 60 companies investing in the development of new antimicrobial therapies. And at the same time, within Innovate UK, we have been looking at investing in diagnostics, because this is particularly important when it comes to AMR. We haven't invested as much money, quite £9 million in this area, but we have engaged with more companies. Essentially, as I said, Innovate UK is largely helping business. Other bits of the AMR strategy have been picked up by some of the other research councils who work on a more R&D basis. So Innovate UK have been working closely with the Department of Health and Social Care, and part of my main role is to deliver 2 programs for them on AMR. And the first one is a collaborative program that is being undertaken with China, the Ministry of Science and Technology in China, where both us and the Chinese government are putting in £10 million each, and we're funding projects looking across the board on new therapies, diagnostics, animal feed, and these also include in some of the projects Chinese traditional medicine, and that is now up and running very well. And then we've hit a bit of a hurdle because of COVID-19, but that program is now active, and there are about 14 projects, and I think that showed to me that collaboration can be really, really useful in this field, particularly international collaboration. And then we've also got more of a UK-based project program we're delivering for DHSC, and this is an SBRI program, and it's again £10 million investment, and it's called AMR in Humans. And this is mainly had a narrower field, and it was aimed to look at new therapies again, and to start looking at infection prevention and control, because we believed there wasn't as much work going on in that area, and it was very important. And we have 13 projects going on in that area. I will say that the vast majority of those are, in fact, new therapies. So then we've moved on, and we now have a new 20-year vision and a new a 5-year plan, and you've probably all seen this. But I think this is key again to what we've been trying to do in reducing the need for unintentional exposure to antimicrobials, optimizing the use of antimicrobials, and also importantly, investing in innovation, supply and access. So what we often talk about antimicrobials, and when I talk about that, I really mean diagnostics as well as antimicrobials. They have to go hand in hand. So we're looking for, we're looking in the future for investment in new diagnostics, antimicrobials, vaccines, anything in infection prevention control, which will help address the 5-year plan going forward. So a little bit about why we chose Germany. So basically, I think it's probably common sense. We knew that Germany was a pioneer in recognizing the importance of AMR, and you probably know about the German antimicrobial resistance strategy, also known as DART, which contains measures for averting and combating AMR. And also a big thing happened in Germany as a result of the 2017 G20 Global's G20 heads of state mission in Germany, when there was a decision to set up the Global AMR Hub R&D Hub in Germany, which is an initiative for all international players. And I think basically both nations have got quite a lot in common in AMR, and I'll come on to a little bit about that in a moment. And obviously joining together will hopefully help bring development forward to produce new technologies and capabilities. So a little bit about the GEM, and this is a picture of us out in Germany, and as all of the pictures, most of them have been taken by Till. And so this is one of the institutes we went to see, and you can see me on the right, and other speakers here are Dan and Till, who you will see in a moment. And at the back we have Martin, who was the scribe for and the writer for the program, who's also got a very interesting website called AMR Insights, if you don't know. And we have Katrin, Sandeep there, Elena, and Doris Ann from BIVDA, who happen to be on this photograph. So I'm going to point out some of the high-level outputs from this GEM. And the first thing I'd like to say is that we have similar sections of the challenges posed by AMR. However, there are substantial differences in the way that we're trying to curb them. Well, those are the words anyway. So in this German strategy, it stresses the importance of measure and improve treatment, whereas the UK long-term strategy focuses on contain and control and emphasis on infection prevention, stewardship and innovation. In my small world, in my small little brain, there's not much difference in that really. It's just a way of saying the same thing. You can't improve measurement and improve treatment without innovation and proper stewardship, etc. So I think we really have got a similar approach really to addressing this issue. So I'm going to pull out the high level recommendations now, and you will see that many of these are, most of these are related to diagnostics. Now that's not to say that we didn't look at other things when we were out in Germany, but the diagnostics areas seem to come to the front, and that is why many of our recommendations are related to that. So some of the recommendations include developing diagnostics tools that can create evidence for the tests to improve antibiotic treatment decisions for specific conditions, and tools that can help evaluate and benchmark current available diagnostic tools. And what we're really looking for are highly accurate and highly specific technologies, which will be able to hopefully have low healthcare resources, and will be able to hopefully transmit eventually with high level technology, for example, mobile phone technology, etc. So essentially, easy to use, cheap diagnostics tools, which I think both nations are interested in. So another recommendation is that we should explore opportunities in companion diagnostics, and bringing those together and co-developing them and commercializing them. And we would also think that it would be useful to further talk about some of the regulations and clinical technology needs, business models, among other things, which I think both nations can add their expertise in. We also sort of picked up some opportunities in alternative antimicrobials. They was particularly interested in phage therapy and natural compounds, and also DNA-based CRISPR-Cas9 obviously came up. And these are areas we think we can work more closely together and produce greater outputs. There does appear to be a lot of research in this area in Germany, and we do believe that UK can complement this, and particularly by, in the longer term, sharing our medicine manufacturing techniques. So again, these are opportunities for collaboration. Another a big topic which is coming to the fore now is the microbiome, and we again identified there that there could be areas here to explore in relation to AMR, and this could again be bilateral. And finally, so one of the things, the big thing that did come out of this was that there was obviously, this was very useful, a useful mission. It was successful, and it was decided from that we would then undertake a global business initiative program. I'm not going to talk about that because that will be discussed in a few minutes' time. So that is where I'm going to stop, and I'll happily take questions later on. And if I haven't been very clear, please do say. And at that point, I will leave it and hand it back to Sandeep.
Thanks very much, Phil. I'm just going to share my screen. So I think Phil highlighted some of the experts that were on the mission. So one of them being Daniel Hines, Director of Preclinical Development at Destiny Pharma. So I'm going to hand over to you, Daniel.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the KTN team. My name is Daniel Hines. I'm Preclinical Development Director at Destiny Pharma, which is a small virtual biotech based in Brighton. We're currently working on the development of novel antimicrobial therapies, and our lead asset, XF73, is currently in phase 2 clinical trials for nasal decolonization of Staph aureus in pre-surgical patients. So I tell you that to help you understand how I sort of viewed and what I might have picked up on throughout the trip. The KTN asked me to outline some of my personal thoughts and observations throughout the trip, so I shall do that. Oops. There we go. Okay, so just some initial thoughts overall. I'd never been on one of these expert missions before. I found it to be a very well organised trip with a busy agenda. The delegation met with the appropriate people at relevant organisations. And the delegation also met with government representatives, authorities, healthcare providers, academic research centres, therapeutics and diagnostic companies, by covering the key areas in AMR of prevention, stewardship, diagnostics, therapeutics, and as Phil said, we also covered some insights into alternative strategies to traditional antibiotics. The host organisations we met with were all very welcoming. They were interested to meet with the delegation to learn more about the mission and to share information regarding their organisations and their institutions. So I just thought the reports, as Sandeep and Phil had said, is available to view online, but I thought I'd pick out a few of the institutions and organisations that we met with and pick out a few possible areas that I think could be useful for collaboration. Whilst we were in Berlin, we met with Charité and also the Robert Koch Institute, which most of you no doubt are familiar with. Charité is one of the largest university hospitals in Europe and one of the largest employers in Berlin, which I didn't know, and has a total annual turnover of 1.8 billion euros. I say that just to give you an idea of the size and scale. Charité is involved in large German research projects such as the surveillance AMR in ICUs and also other MRSA related projects such as MRSA KISS, which collates data on MRSA isolates from about 600 German hospitals. It's all available online, and I think there's data going back from about the last 10 years or so in terms of MRSA prevalence in hospitals. The Robert Koch is an official public health institute, so similar to Public Health England or the CDC in the US, and covers a range of areas, including national public health monitoring The RKI is a key part of a greater German engagement on AMR internationally. In terms of opportunities for collaboration between the UK and Germany here, the German counterparts there were interested in more formalisation around the exchange of surveillance data between the two countries. They were interested in bilateral collaboration, specifically regarding capacity building and surveillance in lower to medium income countries. And they were also interested in extending existing collaborations. And if I recall correctly, there are existing collaborations with Public Health England and also Fleming, I think, in addition to others as well. We also went across to Frankfurt, and at the University Hospital there, we met with a representative from the German Centre for Infection Research, DHSC. And DHSC, they work to align translational research with unmet global medical needs caused by infectious diseases. So they're an applied science network, not a pure science research network. They operate, as I said, as a network of over 500 doctors and scientists from about 35 establishments, jointly developing new approaches to prevent, diagnose and treat infectious diseases. The representative we met with in Frankfurt had a specific interest in alternatives to traditional antibiotics, so probiotics, including, for example, lugdanine. They were interested in fecal matter transplant, FMT, other microbiome modulating therapies, and also, as Phil said earlier, phage or phage therapy interventions. And they did admit that they have little experience of advancing projects to phase 1 clinical trials. So the opportunities here are that they're seeking funding to advance some of these projects towards the clinic, and also they're looking for opportunities to collaborate on those projects to advance them towards the clinic, both in terms of skills and also in terms of presumably CRO services to conduct phase 1 enabling studies. They were also, as Phil said and I said above, very interested in alternatives to traditional antibiotics. So moving on. We also went to ICURIS. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with ICURIS, or ex-Bayer company, pharmaceutical company focused on novel antiviral and antibacterial R&D. ICURIS have a fully differentiated research and development pipeline focused on discovering and developing hospital-based products. And their main product is letermovir for the treatment of human cytomegalovirus infections. Their pipeline is online. You can see it there on the slide as well. ICURIS were interested in seeing more collaborations with organisations and institutions in the UK, and would value introductions to relevant industrial and academic groups. Obviously, the industrial groups can do this through by Europe Spring, those sorts of partnering occasions, but they would also be interested in speaking with different academic groups as well. Their interest is in early stage projects rather than late stage ones. So, and by that I mean pre-phase 2 clinical trials, and that they typified themselves as a clinical proof of concept company. ICURIS is very specifically interested in the use of and access to big data, including infection intelligence platforms, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and also gene sequencing data. They did see this as a real key strength in the UK. Oops. And then, and finally, we didn't meet with Boehringer Ingelheim whilst we were on the trip itself. However, we did have a post-trip teleconference with Boehringer Ingelheim Venture Fund. No doubt most of you will be familiar with Boehringer Ingelheim. They're a large pharma, privately owned German company. They have a venture fund, which essentially is a corporate investment fund focused on seed investments into therapeutics. So they're looking to invest very, very early stage. As I said, seed. So they're looking at university spin-outs, they're looking at biotech startups, and they'll tend to want to be one of the first investors there, and they'll go in with other early stage investors such as Abingworth, Fraunhofer, and some of the other big pharma venture funds. And they're essentially looking for a 5 to 7 year growth in order to make the company attractive for subsequent acquisition, in which they've had significant amounts of success by essentially packaging up these companies in order to be acquired by other big pharma companies, or otherwise preparing them and getting them ready for IPO and exiting in that manner. And their current investment portfolio, which was correct at the time of meeting, and no doubt it will have changed since then, was predominantly immuno-oncology and oncology, which is perhaps not surprising. They have 15 investments in that area. Also in regenerative medicine, they had 9 investments, but in anti-infectives, they had 3 ongoing investments at the time of the discussion. However, ideally, only one of those, I believe, was live at the time we spoke with them. In terms of opportunities, it was really interesting to speak with them. They're considering an additional 10 to 15 investments over the next 3 to 4 years in the anti-infective space, though at the time not antiviral, so I don't know whether that will have changed or not recently. They were interested in speaking with UK university groups with technologies to spin out, and also UK, as I said before, UK biotech startup companies seeking investment. It's perhaps worth noting, actually, they pointed out, as one would expect, they were well sort of keyed into activities within the usual universities one might expect in Oxford, Cambridge, London, but they were interested in finding out a little bit more about what was going on, say, in other universities. They didn't have quite as much visibility to, such as, say, Manchester or Nottingham, for example. In terms of the areas of interest for the venture fund, in terms of anti-infectives, they're interested in new modalities in this space, including phage. They're interested in new targets, and then also interested in host immune modulating projects as well, which is perhaps unsurprising given their experience in immune oncology, because one can imagine a crossover over there. Okay, so I mean, in conclusion, and in no real particular order, the German institutions we all met with, they really did appear to place great importance upon operating within the existing international institutions and structures. So by that I mean WHO, EU, and then you know, the national structures like DHSC, also thinking about JPIMR and GARD-P, CARB-X, etc., rather than establishing new institutions. There's considerable overlap and potential synergies in the diagnostic space, as Phil said, and as Till, I'm sure, we'll be talking about. However, there were opportunities, I think, in the therapeutic space for collaboration, notably in the bioinformatics and artificial intelligence, machine learning areas, which are seen as key UK strengths. Also, as Phil said earlier, alternative approaches to antibiotics were discussed, and this is an area of common interest, microbiome and phage therapy. I would say that UK organisations, if they're keen to identify, or institutions, if they're keen to identify collaborations within Germany, I think they'd be well served by contacting Innovate UK or KTN in order for them to link up with their counterparts in Germany, for them to identify potential partners and make those connections. And I suppose one final thing to note is that wherever we went, there was a very real recognition that the UK has done a lot to push the topic of AMR up the global agenda. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I would like to just say, before I start with the next speaker, I'd just like to encourage you to send your questions in if you have any questions for the speakers, and we'll pose them to them during the Q&A session at 3:15. So I will now introduce Professor Till Beckman, Deputy Head of Infection Medicine at the University of Edinburgh, and I also was an expert on this mission. So over to you, Till.
Yeah, thank you very much again. As Daniel said, this was a fantastic opportunity to visit places in Germany and see what the landscape there is, and explore possibilities for opportunities for collaboration and synergies. So before I go into details with the with the content, with the trip, I just wanted to share a slide on myself. My contact details mainly are on there. If you have any questions later on, I'm very happy to be contacted with regard to the mission, or any other questions in relation to AMR and diagnostics you may have. We have other activities beyond Germany, into China, as you may see on the slide. And I'm also worth mentioning that I'm advising several organizations which have been mentioned already. JPIMR, I'm in the advisory board, in the scientific advisory board, the vice chair, and CARB-X and Longitude Prize. So I'm saying that, and India I wanted to mention as well, BIRAC. I'm saying that because in that context, the mission to Germany was of particular interest because of understanding the positioning of Germany in this wider landscape was very important, and shows also the positive opportunities which there are between Germany and the UK with regards to collaborations in AMR, and from my perspective, very specifically in diagnostics. Now, I presume there is a map in the report which has been published. You see here on the bottom, I put in the link to the report. Mainly, I'm taking information from the report in this presentation. However, I'm trying to update this because also as you can see, the mission was in last year, about a year ago. Of course, this is a fast-moving field. And a lot has happened since, and no need to mention pandemics, which obviously have a link to AMR. Now, with regards to this map, I wanted to show that because we really covered almost all of Germany geographically, so from northeast to the southwest. And if you know Germany a bit, you will see that some of the areas where we were in around big cities, around Berlin and Stuttgart, with two sites each. But we also went into a place in Jena, InfectoGnostics and BlinkDX, which is maybe a side of the usual paths which you may have if you visit Germany. So very interesting from that perspective, and also interesting in terms of the background and history of the development of certain sites, which is quite important to understand in order to position those potential partners in these sites with regards to the funding access they may have. And I come back to this, and that refers to the federal structure of Germany and the state funding they may get. Now, we started in Berlin, more specifically in Potsdam, which is in the west of Berlin, with the Fraunhofer Institute of Cell Therapy and Immunology, specifically the branch of Bioanalytics and Bioprocesses. Some of you, or I'm pretty sure you're aware of the Fraunhofer Society for the Advancement of Applied Sciences, Applied Research. It's one of, or it's Europe's largest application-oriented research organization. It has a very strong positioning in this field in Germany to bridge really academic research and industrial translation. Is widespread in Germany with 72 institutes across Germany, and quite a large number of staff, and a substantial research budget. What is important is that Fraunhofer has a requirement to bring in external money, specifically industrial funding, and as such, the Fraunhofer institutes are always very interested in research collaborations or in collaborations with industry. Important to remember is that the Fraunhofer institutes do not market their own products. They always work with partners, and they may be in the clinical development, commercialization, or marketing. or even research. So very often Fraunhofer institutes are participating in larger research consortia, such as European projects or beyond. Specifically at the branch of bioanalytics and bioprocesses, you see on the right in this image, in the scheme, the items which are highlighted there. They have a big collection of technologies which they apply to problems at the interface of medicine, life science, and engineering. They're active since 2005, not at this location, a different location before, but they have a pretty large complex there. So they conduct contract research, mainly for companies, or this is their main interest, but they also partner with other entities. Specifically, the activities around AMR at the Bioanalytics and Bioprocesses branch were on the diagnostics, and some of the activities were on development of alternative diagnostic modalities, binders, aptamers specifically. And I inserted here an image of their so-called IVD platform, which is an open platform for sample processing and analysis. And that's a good example for the work of that branch or the Fraunhofer Society, because many of institutes contributed to this IVD platform. A good example how rapid prototyping and pilot manufacturing and complex expertise led to this these prototypes. Now, the possibilities for collaboration here would be, for example, if you have an assay but no platform to run it on. My impression, and from what we saw there, was that they would be very interested in collaborating with partners having, for example, such assays, looking for platforms. If I move on, we then went to Jena in the south of Berlin to visit the InfectoGnostics campus. The InfectoGnostics campus is a very interesting public-private partnership which builds on the local strength in Jena. And you may have heard of Carl Zeiss Jena, and based on the expertise in optics and instrumentation, this local strength has expanded, and for many years now they have built this campus around optics, but also then as a hub for sepsis research. So in Jena, on this campus, there's, for example, the Center for Excellence in Sepsis at the Jena Hospital. And the InfectoGnostics campus is a good example and a good implementation of this very close interaction between hospitals, local industry, and academic research. Now, they are very much interested in building this local site into a European center for infection research, and as such are very much interested in collaborations. They are very interested in individual project collaborations, but also taking part in larger networks, as Daniel has already mentioned them, which are going across the bilateral collaboration. From their perspective, it was interesting to see, and we heard this more or less across our visits, was that they are missing counterparts of national organizations supporting life science or life science industry. Foremost, as we came with Innovate UK and KTN, comparable organizations they were missing in Germany, and likewise they saw the NHS and Medical Research Council as a strength in the UK. And as such, then partnering with British partners would see a possibility to engage with that and have a yeah, so to have positive collaborations. One company also took part at our meeting at InfectoGnostics, and that's BlinkDX. BlinkDX was founded by entrepreneurs which had previous diagnostics company founded in Jena, which was then acquired, and subsequently they founded BlinkDX, and the platform again which they have developed. So you can see a theme that a lot of engineering strength which is available, and optics in this case is the reader or the platform which they have developed is seen here on the picture. Not sure if you can see my mouse moving, but it's here on the right, Project Dresi. And that is a platform which again looks for partners or looks for essays for content to be implemented on that platform. And they have designed this so it has a wide applicability for different tests to be implemented. And I put a few links here which are collecting or giving overview on the wide bandwidth or wide spectrum of activities on the InfectoGnostic campus in Jena. Now, we then continued our travel down south to south of Stuttgart, a little place called Holzgerlingen, where the company Curetis is located. So Curetis is a molecular diagnostics company again, and they address the detection of infectious diseases in hospitalized patients. And they have developed this system, Univero A50, which is a, as you can see on the right, a relatively large device or platform. However, it has wide capabilities as they have described it. Interesting here, Curetis really originated from activities of Philips in the Stuttgart area, and a team of engineers and entrepreneurs originating from that activity. So a strong SME base around Stuttgart, and prior IVD initiative there led to the development of Curetis, or the technology which then led to Curetis itself. It was a very interesting discussion around the implementation of diagnostics and rapid diagnostics to tackle AMR, and the challenges around market acceptance. Curetis has conducted a range of health economic studies which were addressing the cost per test and the actual value of the diagnostics and the health economic value of using it. The aspects they have described at the meeting was also that there was, of course, a need for behavioral change for the adoption of AMR diagnostics, or diagnostics which is addressing the AMR scenario or a situation as a whole. With regards to Curetis, they have obviously a test which they have developed, but from the understanding of or from what we have discussed, I would be not surprised if they had a strong interest in collaborations with British partners. Also today, after one further year. However, what you may have seen this in the news, and this is what, or in the respective news, pasted this down here. The company has merged with an American company, Opgene, and they are term in liquidation sounds very strong here. The company is in operation. There's just a technical term to because they're as far as I understand, will keys Curetis as a name and move on under a new name. However, operations are still all as before, or no change to the, or no reflection of the term liquidation here with that. So from Curetis, we didn't have to move far to the northeast of Stuttgart to a small town of Weiblingen. to Bosch Healthcare Solutions. Most of you will have heard of Bosch. Many of you may not have heard of both Bosch Healthcare Solutions. The reason for that is that they did a lot of their development for this platform here for some time without publicity. However, the Bosch Healthcare Solutions is a strong activity focusing on the development of this Vivalytic automated platform for molecular diagnostics. It's of course, building on the strength of the Robert Bosch Group as a whole on microsystems technology, miniaturization, and smart networking, some of which you may know when you interacted with Bosch. The interesting model here is that Bosch has partnered with other companies who have content, specifically here Randox and R Biofarm, and Randox and R Biofarm had assays and developed those further on the platform of the Vivalytic, and they're marketing them together. You may have seen those offered at respective situations. So the example of the partnership with Randox is very interesting from a UK perspective, and it was pretty clear that Bosch Healthcare Solutions was interested in talking to further partners to bring this forward. As with all the other platforms which I've described before, obviously they are all interested in clinical partners as well for validation studies or for testing studies in hospitals, as it is happening, for example, or as we routinely do in Edinburgh. Now, from here, I wanted to speak. I'm going back to Berlin and say something about the Global AMR R&D Hub, which was present in most of our discussions as we traveled Germany and discussed about AMR. You may have heard about the Global AMR R&D Hub. It was launched in 2018 during the World Health Assembly in Geneva. Dates back to the German G20 presidency, and it was then launched accordingly. Today we have 16 countries partnered in the AMR R&D Hub, including the European Commission Wellcome Trust and Bill Melinda Gates Foundation. A lot has been talked about this, and when we were at the mission, it was the announcement was still there, or the plan was there to develop and then release the dynamic dashboard, which would depict the situation around investment in AMR research globally. And it builds obviously on other previous existing activities, like from the JPI AMR feeding into the dashboard, and would provide real-time information or up-to-date information on where investments happening, and that should help prioritizing decisions and recommendations by respective users. Now, by now, it has been released, or it has been released earlier, since we have been there, and you find again the links there. What I would like to point out is that you see over the years there's a decline of investment in AMR, which is from an AMR perspective, obviously that's worrying because we haven't found the solutions in there. Now it is still updated, the dynamic dashboard, in terms of there are functionalities to be added, and I'm not entirely sure how final the development of the dashboard itself is, so I would like to qualify these data with regards to what is included in total before I make conclusions on that. But it is a very useful tool to have this dynamic dashboard, and I'm pretty sure we will see more from the Global AMR R&D Hub. At present, they're focusing on human health, but animal health will be included as we move on, as well as diagnostics more specifically. Currently, they are mostly focusing on therapeutics. And from here, I would like to summarize. So my thoughts here really also extending from what Daniel and Phil have said. So, in Germany, we see many diagnostic SMEs. There's really a strong base of small and medium enterprises focusing in this area. As I've said, we have this strong engineering knowledge and capacity where these SMEs are building on. However, in our discussions, we saw that there is they're building and linking with classical clinical microbiology in the hospitals. Daniel has mentioned the Charité, but others like in Jena, a big strong activity around sepsis, and others are very beneficial for the SMEs and partners. I mentioned the federal system in Germany and the respective impact on funding. This is important as a really a strength. There's regional funding available. However, this regional funding structure sometimes makes the funding arrangements with external partners slightly more complicated. However, it can be addressed, but they mentioned this across the visits, or it came up again and again, that this is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And of course, Phil has mentioned this, there's a political will to tackle AMR, which is fantastic, in order to drive collaborations. In terms of opportunities, diagnostic implementation studies together with diagnostics impact studies were things which, themes which came up. Not so often happening apparently in Germany with regards to implementation studies. So there was a strong interest in that. I also confirmed the diagnostics partnering, drug diagnostics partnering as an opportunity. Areas for development in Germany were seen in this space of public health and global health. And here again, from a British UK perspective, it's an opportunity for development of partnerships with German partners. And again, the federal system here, I have it here as an opportunity, as well as a strength. And with that, I want to conclude and thank you for your attention. I'm very happy to take any questions in Q&A or later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Till. It was a very eloquent description of the mission, and good to get your thoughts as well. So the next part of the webinar, we'll head over to Gabriella for the interactive Mentimeter session. So I'll head over to Gabriella.
Hi, Sandeep. Thank you very much. And yes, I am Gabriela Martinez. I am part of the KTN and I look after antimicrobial resistance and global health. And in this session, we would like to understand your appetite and your views in collaborating with Germany on AMR. So I will ask you, everyone, to go to menti.com, if you can type that in your web browser, and then include or type the number, the code that is there, which is 788473. I will give you a few seconds so that you can all log in. Is that, have you logged in already? And thank you, Poonam, for putting the first question. So if you have logged in, please include, oh, you have already answered the first question. Would you like to collaborate with Germany? And it seems like everybody is very interested in doing that. So thank you very much. So I guess we have, Sandeep, do you think we can continue?
Yes, yeah, okay. Feel free to.
So I think that most of you reply, yes, you would like to collaborate with Germany. I thought there are some interesting questions there, some interesting answers, but only a small percentage said no. Well, the next question is, would you like to start collaborating with Germany or continue collaborating with Germany? We wait a little bit to see your answers. So it's very similar to the previous one. Most of the people would like to collaborate or start collaborating with Germany, but still a few people would not like to do that. So which sectors would you be interested in collaborating with Germany? And you could see that you have human diagnostics, animal diagnostics, human therapeutics, animal therapeutics, human vaccines, animal vaccines, and other. And for the people that have clicked others, in the next session, you will have the opportunity to include which other areas you are interested in. And I can see that most of the people are very interested in human therapeutics and then followed by human diagnostics. However, the animal sector, there is some interest there. So I will move to the next one, and anybody that click other, please enter which other areas are you interested in. Breathing related PP. It's only one person has included, no. Okay, vaccines and diagnostics, very good. We're getting a bit more specific on the type of therapeutics and other services or other interests. So that's really good. Thank you very much. This is very useful for us. And now, what do you perceive as barriers to collaboration? In this case, with Germany. Okay, there are some interesting answers here. Language, Brexit, funding. Yeah, funding is usually contracts, which is a funding mechanism related to funding. So I think that, Sandeep, we will be looking at all of this and perhaps then providing some feedback.
Yes, yep. Interesting outcomes, Brexit, of course.
Yep.
Lack of awareness of who to work with. So I guess that's around networking, having the connections.
And how would you overcome these barriers? What will help you to overcome these barriers? Funding, sector mentors, very interesting. Anyone else? I think a lot had to do with with funding, but also followed by mentors and how to find the right partner. It seems, whether that's by networking or direct introductions, I think. And choose one word to describe the strengths that Germany has in AMR, or drug-resistant infections. That's really interesting. The size of the word means how many people have put or have considered this as a more important strength. So we can see that at the moment is data engineering and diagnostics. Some of the got people agree more. Perfect. Thank you very much. I think I were still, oh, okay. The next, use one word to describe the strengths that the UK can bring to a collaboration on drug-resistant infections. Keeps changing, so that's really good. More people are. So a lot of data expert, data innovation ideas, very good. Genomics was there. So I think that a lot of that has gone around data and innovation, but I think that there was something also very interested in the global thinking, which was earlier. So I guess that we can move to the next one. And will there be any interest in identifying partners in Germany for a joint AMR project in the context of COVID-19? Okay, that's actually changing, but it's very interesting. The majority is interested in identifying partners. Some people have said no, and 18% are not sure, which is actually very, very interesting and useful. I guess that we probably need a bit more information on how to engage and what can we bring and what they can bring to the table. Thank you very much to all.
So the next session, is the Q&A with all of the speakers, and that's going to be led by Gabriella again and Tanya, the Partnership Manager for Europe at Innovate UK. So I will head over to you. And also, before that, I'd like to encourage all participants to send your questions in as well. We'd love to hear from you, and if you've got any questions for the speakers, do send them through to the Q&A box.
Right, so yes, my name is Tanya. As Sandeep said, I'm the European Partnership Manager at Innovate UK. We'll start with maybe one of the first questions that came in about an example of companion diagnostics. Till, could you maybe give some more examples? I think we mentioned those a few times.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tanya, to give examples of
companion diagnostics.
Well, so the principle of companion diagnostics is something which I need to start my video. Here we go. So, principle of companion diagnostics is obviously something which is coming from oncology, and so there is a regulatory connection between the diagnostics and the drug. Now, this has been this has been seen as an opportunity, but also as a limitation for antibiotics because of the linkage with in oncology. That's something which makes sense because, or it becomes sensible because of the high costs for the drug in terms of oncology. In terms of in the situation of AMR or antibiotics, that's a challenge because the drugs usually are much less expensive. So the companion diagnostics becomes a little bit more loose. So here, in general, it's difficult to give an example or to give a guideline, but in general, it's more a much more loose connection in terms of, or it's debated in terms of the combination of a diagnostic with an antibiotic. However, if you think about a narrow spectrum drug in development, that narrow spectrum drug would certainly benefit from a diagnostics which identifies the pathogen you want to treat or the pathogen group you want to treat. Generally, the diagnostics which are developed or which are currently in use are not giving that in a manner which would be beneficial for the for the narrow spectrum drug. I hope that answers the question, but I'm happy to continue offline as well.
Yeah, I think that was, I can't remember who the question was from exactly, but hopefully it answered their question.
Okay, can I go for the next question, Tanya?
Mm-hmm.
So the next question is for Daniel, and is to ask you if this mission that you went to Germany resulted in a new collaboration between Destiny Pharma and a German organization, and if so, could you elaborate?
Okay. I think the objectives of the mission were fact-finding and research. It wasn't to benefit individual organizations, really. That said, connections with, obviously for a small biotech, meeting with companies like iCuris and also with the Fraunhofer, meeting with the people there and understanding the scope of what they do was clearly very useful. I think the KTN could probably outline to you the purpose of the GBIP, which is the follow-up mission, which is designed to put those connections into place and to develop business opportunities going forward. So, and Destiny Fund will be involved in the GBIP. So I look forward to making partnerships work there and identifying them. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel.
Maybe while we have Daniel on the spot, could you maybe pick up the question from Chris as well, that Chris has asked us, what is the feeling in Germany on the use and application of natural immune boosting capabilities of natural products, in particular enhancement of innate immune function and provision of antimicrobial peptides, in particular that link innate function with adaptive antibody production? Yeah.
Okay, I'm a small molecule antimicrobial person. So in answer to your question, obviously it's a very hot, it's a very interesting area. And specifically at the moment, due to COVID, I mean, as you know, I mean, that's why you've asked the question, looking at innate immune modulation in that context could potentially make sense. In terms of people to contact, this question, it's a very specific question. This specific question didn't come up. However, the scope of what you're talking about would be covered by the areas of interest outlined by the BI Venture Fund, I would say, certainly in terms of, you know, the host immune modulating projects that they'd be interested in, and or iCuris, and then potentially if you are looking for projects in this area, then Frankfurt, the DITSIF representative at Frankfurt, this would fall within her areas of interest as well. And I'm sure if you want to follow up, Gabriella could provide you with some contact details.
Great, thank you, Daniel.
The question, Chris, please feel free to post a follow-up question if it doesn't.
And I would just want to say in that question, we actually, although we didn't visit, Germany is very strong on natural product research, and there is the Leibniz Institute for Natural Product Research and Infection Biology. So that's another contact for you, Chris. So I will just pass to the next question, and the next question will be directed to Phil. Phil, could you tell us what will be the impact of Brexit on joint innovation projects between the UK and Germany?
Well, at the moment, anything that's ongoing through the European community is valid. In the future, I'm not so sure, and I can't comment on that because these negotiations are still going on. But we would be still looking in the future to do some collaboration. I would be keen to do a bilateral collaboration with Germany in the future. I'm not going to say that's going to happen in the next year, but it might be a few years because of the obviously other things going on as well with COVID. But bilateral collaborations will probably continue and may become more apparent. There may be more of those in the future. But Brexit is not going to help things in general, in my personal view.
Thanks, Phil. Is anybody wants to comment? Okay, Phil, now that we have you there, and perhaps this is also very pertinent, which countries will be the focus of the next missions, and so why?
So at the moment, we are reviewing the process of where we would like to go next. So we're assessing what has happened and how successful what we've done has been. We are, so this is an internal process going on at the moment. If anybody has got any particular areas or nations that they think would be of value to work with in the AMR area, I would be interested to hear. But we have not made any decisions yet, and I'm going to say that it's likely that we won't do anything new in the next 12 months because of what's going on, but we'll be looking for new ideas in the future. But we do need to make sure that there is a really valid reason for doing that as we go forward. We know we've got to know that there's a base there to start with.
Thank you, Phil.
Okay, there are quite a few questions coming in, so these aren't necessarily in any particular code. I'm trying to get questions in from as many people as possible as well. So if you have submitted several questions, you might not be able to pick all of them, but I'll take one that's addressed to Till. Are you aware of people looking at the question in reverse, i.e. identifying the patients for which the cheap and highly effective existing antibiotics are the most effective treatment, and avoiding the wholesale movement to second and third line drugs and their cost and resistance selection, so sensitivity testing and so on? You understand this is one of the questions that came in at 3:24 from Professor Nigel Saunders.
So this is test. So I'm not exactly sure I fully understand. So this is looking for host testing, or for the. I mean, obviously, maybe I can turn that around again. So if you test a patient who has an infection so sensitivity testing, yeah. So I think that what that question aims at is that you would like to, so obviously a diagnostic which identifies susceptibility has the benefit because then you know that the drug you're testing for can be used rather than a genomic test where you detect resistances. So usually, and that's an issue I think across the board, is that research and also the some of the novel diagnostic developments go for the big resistance topics because they are the most scary. So the carbapenem resistance, for example. However, if you look at which drugs are currently used, penicillin resistance, the resistance against really the first line drugs which are used and then the biggest numbers are most worrying, or let's say we should do research on them because these are the most drugs used. If you think about across the world, amoxicillin is used to very high extent. So if you could use that and understand better what the resistance situation is or how to overcome it in certain or avoid it, that's much more effective potentially. So if I understand the question correctly, that would be my response to this. So susceptibility testing in order to make the use of widely used antibiotics possible, rather than host testing. Host diagnostics has its own remit, of course, from a different perspective.
Okay, great. Thank you, Till. Gabriela?
Yes, I can do the next question, and this will be open to all the panelists that came from Rona MacDonald. And was there any discussions during the mission about AMR diagnostics in the veterinary field? And I would like just to point out that because of the time that we have allocated for this mission, most of the work that we did, or most of the fact-finding that we did, was on the human field. But I would like to open it to all panelists and just to give us your opinion on the opportunities in the veterinary, especially diagnostics field. Till, I don't know if you want to start or somebody else wants to start first.
So with regards to the veterinary field, as far as I remember, that wasn't a big topic while we were there in the discussions, although at least some of the partners have an interest there. So I know for sure that this is a topic in Potsdam at the Fraunhofer. It's in InfectoGnostics has activities in this field. I'm not fully aware if Curatis or Bosch have activities in that field. However, clearly there is an interest in Germany in the veterinary field for diagnostics and AMR. I'm the international coordinator of the VetDX network, which is specifically looking for partners in the UK. So that's existing. If you are interested in that, please get in contact with me. I can connect you. So there is a focus on veterinary diagnostics, and around Berlin there's a big hub on that. But it's Germany wide. But around Berlin, certainly plenty of companies interested in there.
Thank you, Till. Phil, do you have any views on any follow-ups on the veterinary field?
No, I've not really got anything to add, but I would say that I don't think we, with the limitation of time we had on that trip, we didn't explore the veterinary side as much as we could have done if we had longer. But as a principle, I think the veterinary AMR is a system, and we should not be ignoring the veterinary side because it is a crucial component of the whole AMR system.
Thank you very much, Phil. And Tanya, would you like to read the next one?
Sure. Did anyone else want to add anything to that question? Still, I think we've covered.
Maybe one thing to add, people should keep an open eye. So we will be announcing soon I think we will do a webinar as well on veterinary diagnostics and AMR through the VetDX network. So if you're interested in that, either let me know or look into Twitter and so on. It will come.
Could KTN help on making sure everybody knows about that, Till?
Yeah, I can let you know, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, right. I'm just having a look at some of the questions that we have. I think some of them have pretty much been answered. The which country will be the focus of the next mission, thanks. So another one from Martin to Till. Could you elaborate on the technological developments with respect to molecular microbial diagnostics? Do these differ between UK and Germany, different focuses, different platforms, etc.? Does that make sense to you? I'm not quite sure I fully understand the question, but.
I don't think that there is a general difference between the UK and the Germany situation with regards to molecular diagnostics. Both countries have strong interests in the field. Generally, in the UK, we consider that genomics and next-gen sequencing is an important strength in the pathogen field and moving that towards diagnostics. You don't see that so much in Germany. It's the perception, I think. However, it is happening. There's pretty much happening in this field as well in Germany. There's just a recent publication on cell-free DNA sequencing using nanopore, but then here you have the UK link as well. So yeah, I don't think there are big differences. Both of the countries are pretty interested in the field and also in terms of taking it forward into application.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks, Till.
So the next one is really a follow-up from the veterinary and the environmental one. And we're talking about, because there was not much discussion on the veterinary aspects of AMR, do we assume that the funding call will not be on animal health or AMR, animal health and AMR? And if so, how do we address this? And then that will follow up with the One Health approach, which involves also the environment. And I just want to say, I don't think that there is a funding call yet in mind, but as Phil said, we are actually, interested in both animal, environment, and human, so the One Health approach in general. But I will leave to Phil to expand on this. Yeah,
so there isn't a funding call actually out at the moment or in the immediate future. We are, as I said before, very interested in the veterinary side. I think as we move towards a call, if we can do that and if we find the funds for it, we will have to make a decision on the focus of that call, and we'll make that decision further down the line. It depends on the size of the call, and we have experience before, if you have too wide a call, then it sort of dilutes what you get in a little bit and what you can focus on. So I'm not saying we'd focus on the human or the veterinary side. We'll make that decision if we have the money later on. But we'll be able to do it all together. Who knows? It's a bit vague, sorry.
Thank you very much, Phil. And now just to follow the a different question, which is what Tanya was referring before, was Germany has been a major recipient of Horizon and other EU funding. Did the mission see opportunities for SME organizations to follow up findings from multi-country research in phage and antimicrobial peptides, etc.? So really, I think that the question here is, are there any opportunities for European funding and European collaborations? Is that what?
I guess that's what it is. But I don't know if KTN you're more aware of. Obviously, for Horizon 2020, the last funding calls are this year, and the program for Horizon Europe is still open. And the UK, the exact format of UK participation in Horizon Europe is to be determined. But whether you're aware of something at KTN as to what would be similar, sort of multilateral.
I think that I will take that offline. I will pass it to our European team. We have a team that focuses on all Horizon 2020, so this is not a question that probably I can answer 100% just right now. But Art Dixon, please follow up with me.
I think in the context of the mission, this isn't a question that came up directly. I guess that would be the case across all Horizon 20. This question would remain the same across other Horizon 2020 projects, regardless of territory. So I don't know. One would have to identify the investigators and follow up there, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
Right, so we have a few more questions. We have one from Martin about a more general question, whether we see substantial differences in the business dynamics between the two countries. So is this, well, this mission, Martin, as you know, you were part of this mission as the technical writer. So we were looking more at the sort of opportunities that might be there and how this works. Of course, there are some differences between how businesses work in each country, but I'm not sure what exactly you mean by business dynamics. But I think in general, within Europe, the differences aren't as substantial. Of course, there are certain things that need to be taken into consideration every time you're doing business with organizations from other countries, but I wouldn't really say that there is something that we could highlight here and now, unless anyone else wants to pick up any interesting points.
No, all I can say, it's a lot easier than working with some countries in Asia, I would say. Yeah.
And the other thing I think I would like to add there, that obviously there are cultural differences between the UK and Germany, and some of the things are or might be relevant to the adoption of the products in the countries, but it's probably also just to follow normal business, engagement when you are working with countries, just to understand the cultural context and the background and the infrastructure that each country are working with.
Exactly.
Something that did come up, and Till, you might be able to add to this as well, was reference to is it the Mittelstand? So the middle-sized companies. There was when we spoke with people at the embassy, there was definitely seemed to be perhaps more valuing of mid-sized companies rather than an emphasis on state support or state subsidization of larger organizations. There was definite belief that mid-sized companies can grow to be larger organizations. So in terms of business practices, that was one thing that I picked up on that I thought was possibly a bit different to the UK.
Absolutely. So this is why I mentioned the backgrounds of the locations where the companies where we visited. So around Stuttgart, that area is pretty strong in the Mittelstand, that's SME, medium-sized companies. So they are, and it's a general understanding that those companies, as you say, can grow and have a significant contribution. So that might be a difference, but there's clearly a strength in or a particular aspect in the German system or landscape.
Okay, great, thank you.
What are considered the most important translational applications for microbiome data in the development of AMR therapeutics and/or diagnostics? And I don't know if who wants to take this. We'll open it to the entire panel.
It's not really my area, but I would say something that is obvious there is treatment of C. difficile. So using antibiotics to treat C. diff infections, you don't want to knock out the host microbiome for a number of reasons. That's the obvious thing that your question makes me think of. But as I said, I'm not an expert, and if you did want to be connected with anybody working in the microbiome area, the representative at Frankfurt would probably be one of the people to speak to. But Gabriella would have a list of people you could be put in contact with, I would have thought.
Thanks, Daniel. And I actually just going to point out that the KTN has a special interest group on the microbiome, and that we have a network not only of academics, but also industry, and we could, through them, link you to someone in Germany if that's, if that's something that you want to discuss offline. So please feel free to drop me an email.
We have one more question in the Q&A box, but that's from Gurgan Ren. I don't think there's really a relevant question. I understand they're looking for partners, so I would suggest that they contact perhaps Gabriella or someone at KTN if they want to find partners that they can collaborate with in the UK or elsewhere. Did we have another question?
Yes.
Coming in? Right, so we have maybe one last question. I think we have like one minute left on the agenda, if I'm correct, if I remember our planned timings.
Yes.
The question from David is, are there differences, e.g. in healthcare funding / organization, that could make the uptake in diagnostic testing different between UK and Germany? I'm not sure, Till, is this something you could touch upon? Perhaps you're also familiar with the German side from outside this mission.
I mean,
This is perhaps a little bit
yeah,
outside the scope of this mission as such, that this is a lot wider, wider question, policy question, but.
It is, and I mean, it's the way I mean, clearly there's a difference in the healthcare system organization, how it is in Germany and in the UK. Clearly in Germany you have much more private healthcare, and that's sometimes seen as a possibility to have easier introduction of interventions which may be more costly, so you don't have the NHS procurement barrier if you want, but it's there are differences. If it is easier, well, it's not, the answer is not saying if it's easier, but it's there are differences. So I would say if you want to enter into that field, it's wise to make yourself familiar or have someone who helps you with that, understanding the system, because there's the public healthcare, there's private healthcare, the different insurers, etc. So that's it's a landscape which is not always easy to understand from the outside. And the other thing is the organization of the healthcare itself. With regards to the diagnostics, there are much more pathology labs and testing labs outside the hospitals. So for GPs, they would not send their samples to hospitals, but to labs. So that's a much stronger field there, which is covering for a lot of diagnostic requests from primary care. That's a big difference to the UK.
Yeah, indeed. Great. Thanks for trying to cover that one as well, even if it was a little bit outside this as well. I think that's all for the questions. Thank you very much for those. If there's something that we didn't quite answer, you can send us the questions later as well. And Sandeep, are we pretty much on schedule?
Yes, thank you very much. So thanks Tanya and Gabriella for fielding those questions. So we'll now go to the next part of our agenda, which is we're going to be hearing from Mirelle Owen-Hughes, Innovation Advisor at the EEN. So over to you, Mirelle.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. So this is your last presentation, and it's not too long. It's only about 10 minutes. So hold on a little bit longer, please. Thank you. So I'm Mirelle Owen-Hughes, and I work for the Enterprise Europe Network, and I will cover the Global Business Innovation Program that Peter earlier mentioned during his presentation. So after the Global Expert Mission, we have the program. The program is funded by Innovate UK and organised by the Enterprise Europe Network. And the AMR program was targeted at UK businesses with a focus on diagnostics of infections and therapy. And we were looking for companies who are interested in doing business with Germany and who would like to initiate R&D partnerships and commercial partnerships with a German organization. I wanted to say that that program was very much of a collaborative effort with the KTN, the Innovate UK team, of course, and built up very much based on the GEM report, actionable recommendations, and we also involved DIT and the Enterprise Europe Network in Germany and in the UK. That's because I'm just mentioning that because some of you were interested in partnership with German companies. So the program started, so it's already started. We had some few hiccups because things are changing all the time due to the pandemic. And really the program already started back in the end of last year, and where we started the recruitment process. And we selected, so KTN selected companies, and 9 selected companies accepted to come on the program. So so Peter already mentioned how it splits. I can't get the next slide. That's it. There's the program is in 3 phases. Getting ready for the market. So that comprises exactly into a workshop for all the delegation to meet up and to do some peer networking, and also with their we allocate during that process a Enterprise Europe Network innovation advisor, and we prepare we prepare we look at the market, we'll do some market research, so that there is a lot of preparation going on there. Then the second part is the in-market visit, where in this case it's we have the first part of the visit is around attending the AMR conference, the 4th AMR conference in Switzerland, and the second part was to go to Germany, fly to Germany and meet some organization. I will go through more details during this presentation, but so the second part was to go to Germany and meet some organization, key stakeholders, and also some German organization. So each part of the visit is complemented by face-to-face or some business matchmaking events. So that it's whether it's during the conference and during the face-to-face visit, you can do plenty of networking. So the third part of the program is the ongoing business support that the company gets throughout the program with the Enterprise Europe Network and also KTN. Around the to optimize on the opportunities and respond to skill gaps. So they receive business, all the delegates will receive, based on the skill gap, business support, and EEN tracks the outcome of the program. So we had originally, we were going to go to the AMR conference in March 2020, but due to the pandemic, it's now moved to the 24th, 25th of August. And it's now likely to go virtual. Nothing's been confirmed yet, but the Swiss government has prohibited a large event, public event, until the 31st of August. So we still don't know what's going to happen on that front. And so we'll keep you updated on that. Some things that I forgot to mention at the beginning is that I will talk about it a bit later, but in the interest of people listening, is that we might have, if you're interested, we may have another recruitment phase for other companies. So the second part of the visit was to visit InfectoGnostics Research and Fraunhofer Institute. We already talked about those organizations during the presentation, and those companies have been very flexible, very welcoming. I know Brexit, you mentioned the impact of Brexit, but from what I felt from the response from those organizations, they were very welcoming and very, very flexible and very keen to meet the delegation. But still in this, so if the conference goes virtual, those webinars, those meetings might also become a conference call or a webinar as well, with an opportunity to listen to some of the professors or some managers working for this organization. So that's already in place. We have many contact with this organization, and we already have a program. So there is in the objective of developing partnerships, we will have Biocom, the organizer of the AMR conference. Even if it goes via virtual, they might have some networking opportunities. And also, because we organize the program with the EE in Germany, we have already organized the face-to-face or virtual partnership matchmaking event there are already 30 companies registered. You can have a look at you will have the slide later, and you've got the link to look at who has registered. So we already have people from Fraunhofer, from InfectoGnostics, and also Till was talking about Blink, DXC. They're also listed on the potential on the attendees list. So really, future is uncertain, and we are busy replanning the program and especially the inside visits. So we are currently contacting the delegates, and we might get their opinion on what they, based on the current their current needs and availabilities. We are replanning. So watch this space. And also, if we do another recruitment phase, we plan to send you the flyer regarding these programs, and you can also contact me you can see on the screen my email address, my contact details. So please do not hesitate to contact me. I'll go back to you, Sandy.
Thank you very much, Mirelle. Well, that brings us to the end of the webinar. I'd just like to say thank you very much to the speakers, really insightful and informative. And also thank you to all of you participants for joining the webinar as well. I hope you found it useful. We will be sharing the recording along with the slides and the contact details of all of the participants. So if there were any questions you wanted to follow up with, you'll have that opportunity. So I'd just like to close and say thank you very much, and I hope you have a lovely afternoon and enjoy the sunshine. Thank you, everyone.